I would like to start off by saying that this story is probably going to read and sound like the plot of a campy 1980s horror movie and is going to be pretty long. However, this entire story is true. If not for being 5 miles from cell reception and the way the story ends, there would be a police report for verification. I will be changing names, locations, and some details in order to protect the privacy of the innocent. A buddy of mine and I try to camp twice a month now that I actually have a vehicle that can be trusted to get me to some more of the remote areas of our state. We planned a camping trip for this past weekend. We chose a fairly remote location that we had been to the previous weekend. The previous weekends, we were the only people we'd seen within 1 mile of our camping spot. Friday night, we get there and set up. This story takes place Saturday night. It's about 9 p.m., so the sun is long gone and the moon hasn't quite risen yet. It's pitch black out, other than what our fire lights up. Suddenly, we hear a man screaming. We listen intently, silently sharing an anxious look. At first, we were hoping it was somebody drunk and having a little too much fun, but it quickly became obvious that this wasn't fun party screaming. It isn't even like he's hurt. It sounds like full of despair, anger, and anguish. I'm going to take a moment to remind you that this is at 9 p.m., pitch black night, in the middle of the woods, 5 miles from the nearest cell phone signal. We hadn't seen anybody in hours. The screaming continues for what felt like hours, but was probably 5 solid minutes. We have no idea what to make of it and started feeling extremely paranoid. We gathered up anything remotely close to a weapon and tried to come up with explanations of the screaming while keeping our eyes on the forest around us. After about 15 tense minutes of fear-induced paranoia, I nearly fell out of my seat as I watched a flashlight and lantern slowly enter our camp. I greeted the stranger with a basic, "How's it going?" before he was even lit up by the fire. He responded quickly but flatly by asking if we could do him a favor. "That depends on the favor," my buddy and I said in unison, obviously tense, holding our weapons close to us. The stranger proceeded to ask if he could hang out for a second by the fire. Given the 2 of us and 1 of him, plus our myriad of weapons gathered from around camp to within our arm's reach, we decided to agree and let him hang out. After a short second of awkward silence, I asked him what the hell was going on. He proceeds to tell me and my buddy that he was camping down the trail with his buddy and that his buddy had snapped and tried to kill him. "Wait, what?" I said before the thought even finished processing in my head. "Is that the screaming we heard earlier?" The man slowly nods, staring blankly into the fire, and begins his story. "We were just hanging out, man. Came up earlier today and my buddy just freaked out. He started screaming and just wouldn't stop. Then he attacked me, literally lunged at me, and I told him to just back off and chill, you know? Well, he kept coming after me and it started getting pretty violent and pretty sure he was going to kill me, so I grabbed my car keys and the lights and ran. I don't know what to do, man. He chased me when I ran and I don't know what to do. We don't have firearms or anything, but we do have a hatchet." My buddy and I looked at each other for a second, completely astonished. Then something horrible dawned on me. "Wait, he chased you? Like he's on his way here, right now?" The man just slowly nods in reply, and right on cue, like some terrible horror movie come to life, we hear screaming from maybe 30 to 40 feet from our camp, down on the main trail. "I just want your effing balance, Gary. I want your balance, Gary. Gary, where are you?" I'd never in my life heard a man scream like this. It was a brutal, guttural scream that was shrill to the ears yet deep in pitch. The sound of somebody gone completely mad, and the way he said the stranger's name would switch erratically from long and singy-songy to short, guttural punches of sound. We killed our lights, became silent and listened. By some miracle, the madman didn't notice our camp and continued walking down the trail, screaming the whole way. We ended up chatting with who we'll call Gary for hours, listening to the screaming, getting further and further. Come to find out, they had taken 4 to 5 grams of magic mushrooms each, and his buddy, who we'll call Ty, was a co-worker of his and was fine for about 3.5 hours, then suddenly snapped. It seemed as though Ty thought he could kill Gary and steal his good trip. We hear the screams get further and further over the 2 hours. By this time, it's 11 p.m. The moon is starting to come out, and it's below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty had no jacket or flashlight, according to Gary. My buddy and I are way too drunk to drive out of camp to get cell service, as it was snowy and icy and required 2 to 3 miles of highway driving after getting off the trail. And Gary was still lightly feeling the effects of weed and mushrooms, so he couldn't drive either. We had to make the decision to let the guy wander, hoping he sobered up and could find his way back. And he did. Oh, he did. Right into our camp. We hear yelling after about an hour of no screams, maybe 30 to 50 feet from camp again. "Hey, help. Please help me. I'm lost." And we can tell the man's walking from the woods into our camp. tell Gary to hide just in case, and greet the man with me carrying my 12-gauge shotgun and my 40 cal pistol holstered. My buddy carrying his AK-47 style rifle and his two 9mm Glocks holstered. And with our flashlights on our brightest settings in his face. He was about 6'2", maybe 6'3", and approximately 300 pounds. We talked to him and decided he was calm enough to walk with, and walked him back to his camp. He seemed really remorseful, said he blacked out and didn't remember anything, and had a falling out with his buddy. We escorted him back to his camp down the trail, returned and told Gary that Ty seems cool and if anything else happened to scream and come running, that we would come out and help him out. It ended up being a happy ending. We actually made friends with Gary and I got his phone number to make sure the next day he got back into town safely, back to his wife and kid, and we were actually planning a camping trip with him soon. Last summer, my boyfriend and I went camping in some nature preserve in Pennsylvania. I can't remember the name. It was pretty primitive camping. No cell service, and we saw 2 other people there in the entire place. It was huge, so it was pretty empty. My boyfriend pretty much immediately said these 2 people seemed off to him right away. I don't know if they had anything to do with what happened last night, but I'll describe them. The first person was a woman who had her truck parked off the trail and the hood open. I don't really notice these types of things, but my boyfriend said it looked to him like she was waiting for someone to pull off beside her and offer to help her with her truck. Normally, my boyfriend is the type to at least offer to call somebody, but he said she skeeved him out enough that he didn't even want to draw her attention more than what was necessary. The next person we saw drove by several times while we were setting up. He just kept driving by slowly and looking at us. I didn't really even notice though until my boyfriend pointed out that he'd already done that twice. Whether these 2 people had anything sinister going on or not, the real story has to do with what woke us up around 3 a.m. It was incredibly loud and sudden. I couldn't describe it or even compare it to anything, but my boyfriend said it sounded to him similar to a chain gun revving up or somebody using some large tool to scrape gravel. My boyfriend jumped up and looked out the little window of the tent. The sound happened again. Again and again, and it was getting noticeably closer each time. I was about to piss myself, but my boyfriend told me it was probably miles off. I didn't question this because loud noises can be heard from miles away, right? Well, later my boyfriend told me that because he didn't want to scare me. And that in fact, it really sounded like it was coming from right down the little dirt road. At one point, he said he suspected it was right in front of our campsite. The only reason he didn't tell me to get out and dart for the car was because he was afraid it could be somebody trying to scare us out of the tent for some dreadful reason. He whispered. I should have noticed he was whispering and known something was wrong, since otherwise he'd just speak normally, right? For me to go back to sleep. However, I could not because every little sound I heard outside sounded like somebody sneaking up to the tent. Eventually, my boyfriend told me to get out and help him pack up. It was maybe 20 minutes after the sound stopped. He held our only weapon, a machete, in front of him. It was a full moon or close to it, so we didn't need a light. While we were packing quickly, I noticed an empty beer can close to our dead campfire. It wasn't there when we went to sleep around 10 p.m., and neither of us even brought any beer. Thankfully, we got out of there, and for the rest of that trip, we either camped in areas well populated by other campers or we got a hotel room. A few years ago, I was 17 and just graduated from high school, and got my first job at a Christian camp near Yosemite in California over the summer. Mainly, the people I worked with were great, really sweet Christian college kids, the good kinds. There was one guy, though, I'll call him Carl, who I frankly did not like. Carl was tall, handsome, and charming. He had curly golden brown hair and a smile that could stop your heart. His eyes, though, were dead. He never got those little crinkles in the corners of his eyes when he smiled. It was like the top half of his face was just dead. There were things I didn't like about Carl right off the bat. His eyes, for one, and that dead smile of his. He also never asked for anything. He tried to twist your arm. He just very softly, very slowly tried to manipulate the situation until you almost felt like you owed him. Each time, it felt like a part of my brain shut down. Like it slammed the door shut, and there was a very clear feeling of, no, this is not right. Save him some food, but do not walk out into the woods to give it to him. Something is wrong. I got along with most of the little cliques at camp. Nobody really disliked each other as far as I knew. We just kind of broke off into groups, based off what we liked to do in our free time or who we worked with the most. Carl, though, seemed to make friends one-on-one within a clique. By the time he left each group, it was decimated. They were fighting, not speaking, and didn't trust each other. I know this isn't a lot of evidence, but I'm trying to paint a picture of a man who just seemed wrong. One day, everybody in camp decided to go to Fresno. We were tired of camp food and wanted a real dinner, maybe to go see a movie or go bowling. Now, at camp, we had a sign-out sheet. Being so close to Yosemite, we often went hiking, so if we left, we had to put our name down, along with where we were going, when we left, and when we should be expected back. This way, if something happened, they would know when to start looking for us. So I put all my info on the sheet and headed down to the parking lot. My friends had all divided up into their cars. I didn't drive, and I jokingly asked if they forgot about me. They said Carl had said I could ride with him. I looked around, but I didn't see Carl, although I had seen his name on the sign-in sheet. All the hair on my body stood on end. I was terrified to get in the car with this guy alone. He felt so wrong and so off. Just not right. I really don't know how else to say it. My friends were telling me I had nothing to be worried about, though, and that I'd be fine. I saw Carl walking towards the parking lot with that dead smile on his face, and everything in me was screaming to not get in the car. I said that I was tired and wanted to stay in tonight, and Carl laid the charm on thick, telling me what a good night it would be and that I owed him because of who knows what, flashing that dead smirk, but I refused. He got angry and told me I didn't need to be such a bitch about it, and I thought we were friends. The lot. I refused still. Finally, everybody figured out that I wouldn't be persuaded. I hugged one of my girlfriends goodbye, whispering in her ear not to ride back with Carl under any circumstances. When they all left, I walked back to the area with the sign-out sheet to cross my name off, since obviously I wasn't going anywhere. I saw the sheet, saw where my name was, and my heart dropped. My name had already been erased. My name's Aaron, and this happened last fall. I'm 26 now, but at the time I had just turned 25, and my girlfriend at the time, Rachel, had been begging me to take her on a real camping trip. Like no bathrooms, no designated sites, no neighbors 50 feet away blasting music. She wanted the authentic experience. I grew up camping with my dad, so I figured why not? It'd be a nice 2-day weekend trip. Just the two of us, no cell service, no stress. We picked this lake deep in the Upper Peninsula. It's not on any brochure or campground map. You basically only find it through word of mouth. A coworker told me he'd gone 3 years ago and that it was one of the most peaceful places he'd ever been. No trails going in. No noises except the wind and the occasional loon. That kind of place. We parked off a forest road and hiked in about 3 miles, weaving through pines and birches until we reached this tiny glass still lake. The water was so clear you could see straight to the bottom from the shore. And best of all, we were completely alone. We set up camp on this little rise overlooking the water. Tent, sleeping bags, fire ring, the usual. The first few hours, everything was just normal camping stuff. Collect wood, boil water, and joke about who would get eaten by a bear first. She was happy, and honestly, so was I. The weird stuff didn't start until later that evening. The first sign something was off was around sunset. We were sitting by the fire when Rachel asked me, "Did you hear that?" I didn't. She said that she thought she heard footsteps somewhere behind us, like somebody walking through leaves. But when I listened, the forest was dead silent. Not even wind. I told her it was probably a deer or her imagination. Because you know how your mind gets when it's getting dark and you're far from civilization. She didn't mention it again, so I figured it was really nothing. We crawled into our tent around 10 p.m. and fell asleep pretty fast. The only sound was the lake gently lapping against the shore. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong in the wilderness. A click. Like a soft mechanical click. Almost like a camera shutter. You know how when you wake up at night, it's like your brain is underwater? It took me a few seconds to understand what I heard. And when it finally registered, I sat up fast. Rachel mumbled something and rolled over, half awake. I whispered, "Hey, did you hear that?" But she was basically asleep. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. Maybe I dreamed it. I lay down again and eventually fell back asleep. If I had trusted my instincts and gotten up right then, we wouldn't have stayed the second night, but we did. We woke up to bright sunlight. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside stretching, and that's when I saw them. Right in front of our tent door, sitting neatly in a stack like someone arranged them intentionally, were 3 Polaroid photos. I thought they were trash at first, like some old campers left them there. But no, they were fresh. The white borders were clean. Not yellowed, not bent, or weathered. They were fresh. Rachel came out behind me, asking what I was staring at. I picked one up and froze. My stomach actually dropped. It was a picture of us, in the tent, sleeping, taken from about a foot away. I flipped to the second one, and it was the same thing, only this one was zoomed in closer on Rachel's face. The third picture gives me flashbacks. It was taken from inside the tent. Like whoever took it had crawled halfway inside while we were asleep. Rachel grabbed my arm and said, "Aaron, what the hell is this?" I didn't know what to say. I wasn't even scared at first. I was confused. Felt violated. It felt unreal, like some prank or something staged for a movie. But the longer we stared at the photos, the more the fear started creeping in, because they weren't blurry. They weren't even distant shots from outside. Somebody had to unzip our tent, stick a camera inside, and take pictures while we were unconscious. And I hadn't heard a thing. Neither had Rachel. And Polaroids, they make noise. That mechanical click, the whirring as the photo ejects. Those sounds I should have heard. Maybe that's what woke me up. But by the time I looked around, whoever it was had already left. That's when we argued about leaving. I told Rachel that we were packing up immediately, and she said no, that maybe somebody left them earlier. Maybe they weren't of us. Maybe we were overreacting. She was trying to rationalize it. I think that was her way of coping, but I wasn't in the mood for theories. I lifted the Polaroid with Rachel's sleeping face. "That's you," I said. Her eyes widened and she nodded slowly. So we packed, and fast. By noon, we were already hiking back to the truck. We didn't talk that much. We were both listening. Kind of seemed like every twig snap and every rustle of leaves made me flinch. We made it back to the truck without seeing anybody, though. The whole drive home, Rachel kept checking the back seat like she expected somebody to sit up from under a blanket. When we finally got back to civilization, she said that she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She threw the Polaroids out the window on the highway. 2 nights later, I was lying in bed at home, trying not to think about it, trying to sleep. Around 3 a.m., my phone vibrated on my nightstand. I thought it was a notification or email, but it wasn't. It was an airdrop request. A Polaroid.jpg from No Name. My blood froze. Just stared at the screen. The preview image. It was another picture of us sleeping in that tent. Different angle, one that I had never seen before. Meaning whoever was there still had more photos, and now they were close enough to my house to airdrop one. I obviously declined the request, locked my door, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. Rachel and I ended up breaking up a month later. Not because of that specifically, but it definitely didn't help. I told one friend what happened, and he said I needed to call the cops. But what exactly would I say? What, we went camping and somebody took pictures of us sleeping? They tell me to stop going off-grid. Maybe he's right. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that person, standing inches from our faces, in the dark, holding a camera, breathing the same air we were. And I wonder if they're still out there, and if they ever plan to send the rest of the pictures.